James, I want to ask you about a couple, let's just say, talking points of the media. Some people would say, Charlie, you're cannibalizing your day of election day voters with all this early voting push. What does the data say?
The data says that's not true. And what's really important is, okay, let's look at who's voting right now in our get out the vote pool and her get out the vote pool. A higher share of the folks that we've already gotten to vote are low and mid propensity, including newly registered voters, than is the same for her. So we're doing a better job of getting these folks that are less frequent voters or less likely to vote and vote early. So we're already building up an edge against her. We also look at the historical voting patterns. We're not having a big cannibalization effect on the election day vote. We're actually expanding the voter pool more than we're doing that. So I would say this, to the degree the other side is saying we're cannibalizing our own sort of high propensity vote, well, they're actually doing it significantly worse than us. So that's a problem for them. Two, I want to point out, and I've been saying this the last few days, back in 2012, if you go back and look, and there's all kinds of news clips and stuff you can read about this if you weren't around, Obama had the early vote just going gangbusters, okay? And the Romney campaign was saying they're just cannibalizing their election day vote. They're just getting their high propensity voters who are going to vote anyway.
Yep.
And we obviously know what happened. It turned out Obama had better turnout. He won the race, and that was that. So that's kind of a false narrative out there. What's important is the underlying data.
We're getting a great point. The data, and also understand when you expand the pool of voting, you're going to pull some other first-time voters with you. You pull the low props with you. And so you're pulling these people into the system. All right, other people say, but the Democrat hopium types are saying their path to victory is they're going to run the table with independents, with indies. What does the data show with non-party registered or independent voters?
Yeah, it depends on what poll you look at, where exactly it stands. But overwhelmingly, they all show President Trump performing significantly better with independents than he ever has before. So there is just not a good data case for that whatsoever. They're not going to run the table with independents. We're going to win them in some cases, or it'll be really close, or maybe a narrow loss as opposed to a very, very significant loss, as we've seen in the past. So again, to your point about hopium, I mean, what I've seen, I have to do a lot of interviews, Charlie, and they're in the cherry picking narratives phase. Early this week, I've discussed the early voting gender gap. That's their path to victory. I've discussed Puerto Ricans. They say are on fire now in the battleground states. That's their path to victory. There's a new path to victory every single day with them. And that is typically, in my experience, when you start to sort of have to cherry pick narratives that aren't backed by the very clear data, that's the spin cycle that you're in right before you lose a race. So I'm not here to say that it's locked up. Everyone must go vote, but there's just not good evidence that they are where they need to be, especially compared to us being ahead of where we typically would be by significant margins.
In closing here, James, I tweeted, I said, if men do not show up on Tuesday, we're not going to have a great election day. Now, there's actually, just to be clear, the evidence shows that we're actually doing better in early voting with the gender divide than we have in years past. And Kamala has not run up this female surge that they predicted. But can you at least say, this, that men do need to vote on Tuesday and we need to at least close the gender divide a little bit? What does the data show in that regard?
Well, you said it, Charlie. I mean, the gender distribution of the early vote right now looks fairly typical of the last several election cycles. There's not a lot of surprises there. In fact, it is slightly more male, and very slight, but slightly more male than it typically is at this stage. So this idea that they're running up the score is just not the case. Two, not all women are voting for Kamala Harris, despite what they would like to have you believe. I mean, we're pulling in a ton of female, new Republicans, new registrants, low propensity voters, all of those things that's embedded into our numbers as well. But you're absolutely right. Men do need to show up and vote. It is their responsibility. Everyone needs to show up and vote, but men need to stand up and lead would be my suggestion. And ultimately, my admonition to anyone would be, don't complain if you can't show up and vote. If you don't like the way things are going and you don't choose to go do something about it, then what are you really doing? That's not the way to lead. That's not the way to change the world. You change the world through your actions. And in this case, it's by voting.
James Blair doing a great job, political director for the Donald J. Trump campaign. Everybody, we need to go nuts these next couple of days. Find new voters, nag them, open up your phone, send 200 text messages, download the Turning Point Action app. And men, we need men to rise up. If men vote, we win, as Kamala would say, just on the other side. When men vote, we win. James, thanks so much.